there's little that I can really add to those two wonderful tributes to Jani already made. What a beautiful selection of music. Pachelbel's canon is one of my favorites, but the Glenn Miller was the one that immediately conjured up the images and vivid memories of Jani. Jean-Marie, Raymond, family and friends. Now that Janice, or Jani, as she was to me, lies in what the poet Byron called the silence of that dreamless sleep, we who still have voice are gathered here today to mourn, miss, and celebrate her. I was privileged to meet Jani very early on. I was still in primary school when Uncle Lester brought Jani along to our place. And Uncle Lester's sister, my mother Dorothy, who trained in hairdressing, shampooed and set Jani's hair. This was around the time when the drive-in theatre at Elwick was beginning to flicker into its 30-year life. And sometimes, in fact, quite often, I used to go there with Uncle Lester and Jani. Jani was ensconced in the front passenger seat of Uncle Lester's two-tone green Chevrolet with its enormous rear fins, while I enjoyed the comfort of the rear cabin all to myself. Sometimes we wandered from the Chev through the car park past mostly hundreds of Holden cars to eat in the cafeteria. But usually we simply stayed seated and ordered through the window. A polite young attendant then set up tray tables that stretched from one wound-down window to the other wound-down window in both front and rear. The mid-1950s was the era of the 8-ounce or more T-bone steak, and I can't count the number of T-bones I consumed in the flickering dimness in the rear of the Chev. But between us, Jani, Uncle Lester, and me, not to mention his gas-guzzling Chevrolet, we three, like most Tasmanians of the era, made our fair contributions to today's global warming. Often, I stayed with Jani and Uncle Lester at 19 Stewart Crescent, and I remember being amazed by Jani's meticulous housekeeping. As Jean-Marie said, everything had to be ironed. Everything had to be 110% dust-free. Everything had to be set out perfectly. And she retained that right to the end. When I visited her home, and I've only been there once at the very top of the hill, I remembered the meticulousness I'd observed when I was a child continued till then. Then there was Tutti Frutti, or was it? No, Fruity Tutti. I don't mean the little Richard Virgin. A wop, pop, a loolop, a lop, bamboo, Tutti Frutti, Rudy. No, that I used to spin on a 45 record, on their walnut gramophone player, a Taruna. No, I mean Janice and Uncle Lester's special Fruity Tutti, fruit and vegetable business at Lower Sandy Bay. It was there that I saw my darling little cousins, Jan Marie, whom my mother insisted upon calling Sally Pie, and darling little Raymond, being brought up by their adoring parents. Unfortunately, my work took me away from Hobart for so many years, to the mainland and overseas, so that it was not until the 1990s that I saw the blossoming of Janice's motherhood. In 1995, in July, I came here to Hobart for Uncle Gordon's funeral, Uncle Gordon being the big brother of Lester. Uncle Lester had died 9 years earlier in 1986 when I was based in China. And at that funeral of Uncle Gordon's, I took the opportunity, along with my sister Helene from London, to ask Janice about her now adult children. They're in Melbourne, she said. They're together and they're looking after each other. I'm so proud of them. Jan Marie's a hairdresser, Raymond's a wood craftsman. Here's their number. So, as I also lived in Melbourne, as soon as I returned with my mother from Hobart and with my sister from London, I telephoned and around they came. And we talked for hours, from the afternoon well into the night. The most important thing about Janice, from my recollection, was that she showed the invaluable virtues of a most devoted wife. No one could have loved, cared for my Uncle Lester more than did Janice. In all the years of his health and in those long, difficult years of his illness. And at the same time, no one could have been a better mother to their two wonderful children, Raymond and Jan Marie. Nothing was ever too difficult for Janice. So after meeting the adult children again, for the past 20 years, as far as our professional and personal lives have permitted, Raymond, Jan Marie and I have stayed in touch. And through them, my mother Dorothy, now also in Melbourne, but alas, at 90, very sorry, she's too frail to be here. As soon as she heard about Janice's death, she said, I must go over. I said, I'm sorry, you can't. My mother has enormous difficulty in walking and other health problems at 90. But she is here with us in spirit. But through Jan Marie and Raymond, Dorothy and I have been able to follow Janice's life. And on occasions see her here or there in Melbourne. And we were delighted last year to see a blooming Janice, blooming despite her various ailments, health problems, to see her in Melbourne. And when, last Wednesday evening, around 8:30, Raymond telephoned, and I said, "How are you?" And he said, "Not too good. I can't contact Mum." I tightened, and I felt for him. Later, Jean-Marie telephoned to say she was booked for Hobart. Woody Allen may say, "I'm not afraid of death, it's just that I don't want to be there when it happens." But for us, mere mortals, we have no choice. We, each of us, will be there when our time comes. Just as for Janice, we were all born to fulfill our lives and eventually to complete our life cycles. And as one who has experienced the deaths of a depression baby husband and the death of my sister, I wish Jean-Marie and Raymond and the close family members and all those closest to Janice to know that I feel for you as you experience, endure, stumble through, and yet survive your long and individual journeys through grief. As that great 19th century novelist, the woman who wrote under the name George Eliot put it, none of our dead are dead to us, not until they are forgotten. We will not forget Janice, just as we have not forgotten Uncle Lester. Raymond, Jean-Marie, family and friends. Janice lives on in her spirit and in our hearts.